The war of words in Europe over the thousands of people clamoring at the continent's borders is getting uglier by the day, even as the images become ever more heartbreaking. Today, the image of a little boy drowned on Turkey's shores symbolized the failure to stop this tragedy, even as the political arguments heat up. Stefan Mayer, the Home Affairs spokesman of Angela Merkel's ruling CDU, has not only criticized the Prime Minister for what he called his out-of-the-club exceptionalism when it comes to migrants and especially refugees, he's also warned that this could jeopardize Mr. Cameron's attempts to renegotiate EU treaties ahead of an in-out referendum on that club. We'll talk to him later in the program. The refugee crisis has many pressure points. They change from week to week, such as the scope of this drama. Today, one of the most alarming is the Hungarian capital, Budapest, where the authorities have closed the main railway station, causing a humanitarian bottleneck. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, is there.
Matt, a week ago there were 500 refugees here and one TV crew, that was us. Now there are thousands of refugees. Police in ranks behind me, as you can see, and scores of media, because this place, Keleti Station in Budapest, has come to symbolize Europe's failure to deal with this refugee crisis. And there's another symbol today, as you mentioned, an image which many viewers will find distressing. That of a small boy, a toddler, who drowned at sea on his way to Turkey, from Turkey to Greece. A boy who presumably was loved by his parents, who thought they were going to bring him to a better life, who thought they were going to save him from death because he probably came from Syria. 80% of the refugees coming this route are coming from Syria. And it's not just Syria, they're also finding life impossible in the surrounding countries, Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey. For them, what brings them here is an increasingly desperate situation. Fresh protests at Keleti Station in Budapest this evening. The refugees and migrants are frustrated, hot, tired and angry. On Monday, the police let them get on trains to Austria, but have now stopped them again with no explanation. Getting this far is a feat. And today, people heard terrible news and saw upsetting images from Turkey, where most here had boarded boats for Europe. Several bodies washed up on the beach at Bodrum, where many embark every day. 12 people, including children, are known to have drowned when their boats went down early this morning. The horror of the Mediterranean replicated here in the Aegean. Families came to see if their relatives were amongst the dead. They were seeking safety and found only death. Others crowded onto ferries today, going from the Greek island of Lesbos to Piraeus on the mainland. They'll continue through Macedonia to Serbia, where the foreign minister says they'll meet no obstacles.
Due to the lack of unified rules regarding migrants and asylum, each country approaches this problem differently. Our reaction is that we will not build a counter-fence. We cannot solve this problem. We are not the world power and we have lots of economic problems. We will show solidarity, but we also ask the European Union to clearly define what its policy is regarding migrants.
That's the exact opposite policy to the next country on the route. The Hungarians are working hard to complete their border fence. One reason so many refugees and migrants are coming now is that they're trying to get through before it becomes impossible. Keleti Station is a choke point. As long as the Hungarian government refuses to let people travel north by train, they'll either run the risk of being smuggled by road or get stuck here. Thousands more will arrive in the next few days. It's hard to see how Hungary can maintain this policy without using force. Tomorrow, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban will go to Brussels to see the head of the European Union and the European Commission. What he's likely to say is that Hungary is trying to secure Europe's borders, unlike anybody else. It's trying to establish law and order, and it will process people, determine who should be a refugee, get asylum, and who should be an economic migrant and sent back. But what Europe's leaders are likely to say to him is that he is not helping. And what the Hungarians are doing is not only inhumane, many European leaders see it as dangerous.
Indeed. Thanks, Lindsay, in Budapest. Well, the vast bulk of refugees have, of course, arrived here in Germany. A record number, almost 105,000 people got here last month alone. This country is bracing itself for many more, and not for the first time. Germany took in over 500,000 refugees from the wars in the former Yugoslavia during the 1990s. Many Germans, especially of the older generation, believe the country still owes the world a humanitarian duty and debt after the horrors of World War II. But people also wonder how long the nation's generosity to outsiders can last without a backlash. As we discovered here in Berlin, not the people, but the authorities are struggling to cope. On a hot, late summer's day, a walk in the park in Moabit in central Berlin revealed something unexpected. At first you might think the clusters of people in the shade on the grass are here for a picnic. But then you notice their luggage, and their children, and their despair, and the numbing fatigue of ordinary families for whom the extraordinary has become the new normal. Most of the people here are Syrian refugees. The last time they slept in their own beds could have been a year ago, perhaps 2 years ago. But for now, this is the end of their odyssey from Syria via Turkey, Greece, Bulgaria, Hungary and Austria to the country in Europe that is more willing to take them than any other. Syrians are at the top of the pecking order. They're virtually guaranteed asylum. But if you're from Gaza and you've been waiting for 8 days for your papers, you get a little nervous, like Mohammed.
Hopefully this is going to be my new country, my new home, but I'm not sure about that.
You're not sure about it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Until you have your papers.
Yes, hopefully.
You'll get them.
Inshallah.
And why did you choose Germany and not Sweden or not Britain, for instance? France?
Actually, Germany, there's a lot of opportunities in Germany. It's a big country. Education is free. I can complete my master. Actually, I got scholarship from Germany before I came here, but I could not go out from Gaza.
After the refugee trauma comes the refugee bureaucracy, the anxious wait for official papers, accommodation, and emergency money of £200 a month per family. And then there's the matter of food, courtesy of the Soup and Sandwich Brigade, all of them volunteers. 5-year-old Hassan is a study in underaged resilience. He tries to get his hands on some soup and bread. Fourth time lucky. And then this urchin of the refugee trail hands the bowl to his mother. By the end of the day, the food distribution is more chaotic. In fact, the Berlin authorities are so overwhelmed by the numbers, they can barely cope. So most of the work is done by volunteers, lots of them. Annette, the second from the left, is a single mother of 2 and currently unemployed. And Frank, opposite her, is a retired bank manager with a few languages up his sleeve.
It's boring sitting on the couch watching TV.
So you're here helping out?
I'm here helping out. Yeah, I'm happy with this job. It's not paid, but I'm quite happy.
I mean, Germany's taking in 1% of its population, 800,000 people this year as asylum seekers. That's an awful lot, isn't it? It's a huge number.
It's a huge number. But if it comes to, faces, when you see the people actually, I think we have a duty at least to help.
Are you also motivated by Germany's history, maybe by some collective historical guilt about what Germany did to the rest of Europe in the past?
Yes, I think so. I think I was born in '63, so in West Germany.
Like me.
So it's kind of, you know, you learn this at school and you have this, it's kind of guilt. But not only guilt, it is something to do something better.
On to the next challenge. Find a place to stay. As night falls, the makeshift camp empties out and there's a scramble. As a refugee, you're always rushing from one bare necessity to the next. Families, women and children get put on buses to army barracks or schools turned refugee centres. But the men tend to be left on the street. Unless they find a volunteer host like Philipp Büchner and his family, one of hundreds who've put people up. We join them for breakfast. Their 3-year-old son Oscar, mother Susie, pregnant with number 2, and their Syrian house guests, Reza and Abdu, fleeing ISIS. The Büchners don't speak Arabic or Kurdish, and the guests don't speak English or German, so table talk is a little complicated.
26? 25. 25?
25.
Reza?
26.
26 and 25.
So here we've got a little Google Translate history of the table talk. The word schwanger pops up, pregnant, because Susie is pregnant. Schwarztee means black tea. Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland. Welcome to Germany. Modern technology. What do you say to those people who would say, well, actually, I don't want to have foreigners in my house. I don't know who they are.
I say, do your Star Wars again. Like Yoda said, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. So just drop it. There's nothing to be afraid of, seriously.
The man with a tattooed neck would beg to differ. Those who don't love Germany should leave Germany, he and his friends shout. This was a march organised by the tiny NPD. They scored 0.3% of the vote in the last federal election.
Wer es einmal nach Deutschland geschafft hat, der braucht sich doch fast überhaupt keine Sorgen machen.
Whoever makes it to Germany can stay here forever. Are we living in a madhouse? Jens Bauer, the regional leader of the National Democratic Party, asks. The party has couched its hatred of foreigners in a mission against Islamic fanaticism, even though that's precisely what so many of the Syrian refugees are fleeing.
Refugees are welcome here!
On the other side of the road, the anti-fascist pro-refugee demo, slogans in English, perhaps for our benefit. Germany has been more welcoming and tolerant of refugees than any other country in Europe. That's why Angela Merkel is trying to shame the rest of the EU into sharing more of the burden. This country knows more than perhaps any other about the perils of intolerance, about where all this could lead. Well, I told you at the beginning of the program that a leading German politician, Stefan Meyer, has upset a few people in London by saying that Britain should do more. Well, Stefan Meyer is with me now. So let me ask you, Mr. Meyer, David Cameron today said, actually, we're not going to do more. We've done enough for Syrian refugees in Britain. What do you say to that?
I'm deeply convinced that we are in a very tremendous situation. We have a huge challenge in Europe to cope with. In Germany, we expect up to 800,000 asylum seekers and refugees in this year. And I'm convinced if Europe makes sense, it makes now sense in a kind of burden sharing.
But is Britain doing enough?
I'm deeply convinced Britain can do more. Britain is the third biggest country within the European Union. It's the third biggest economy. It's a very strong and a very important country. And I'm convinced Britain could do more.
Do you think that if it doesn't do more, this could jeopardize relations between Berlin and London, between Angela Merkel and David Cameron?
I don't hope so. But I'm really convinced that we are perhaps in one of the biggest crises of the European Union, because there is not much understanding in Germany that we have to take up to 800,000 asylum seekers and refugees, 40% of all those who come into the European Union. And a lot of countries, not only Great Britain, but also the Baltic countries, Spain, Ireland, Portugal, they are not willing to cope with this situation. negotiation, only 9 member countries take up to 90% of all the asylum seekers.
But David Cameron needs Angela Merkel on his side while he's trying to renegotiate EU treaties ahead of the in-and-out referendum. So are those negotiations, are those talks jeopardized by Britain's stance on the refugee crisis?
As the chairman of the All-Party Friendship Group on Great Britain in the German Bundestag, I'm deeply convinced that the bilateral relationships between Great Britain and Germany are very decisive, and we want to stick with them.
Can they be jeopardized? Can these talks be jeopardized?
Yeah, I think in a certain way all things stick together, and certainly if some countries and also Great Britain does this cherry picking and says no, we stay out of the club, certainly this could affect the negotiations and the things in other concerns.
If Britain is such a tricky partner in Europe, do you actually want them? Do you want us to be on board, or would you rather say good riddance?
No, I want Great Britain to stay in the club because we need Great Britain. As I mentioned, you are a very important partner for Germany. We have very intensive bilateral relationships, and you are a stable and a very reliable partner for Germany and for the European Union. And I'm deeply convinced a dropout of the European Union would mean a lose-lose situation for both.
Let me ask you another question. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of division within Germany about what to do with migrants. I mean, there's been an unbelievable amount of goodwill towards them. But there are other people who say we have enough asylum seekers here. We don't want any more. We've had extreme right-wing demonstrations against them, even some acts of violence. Is there not a danger that there'll be a backlash against the migrants and the refugees if so many of them come in?
Certainly, it must be a common approach to lower the number of asylum seekers and refugees in the European Union, and I think that's a common goal between London and Berlin. And certainly, in a long-term project, we have to tackle the reasons for the asylum seekers and refugees to leave their home countries. But now we are really in a big struggle in Germany. We have a very intense and tense mood and situation in Germany, and so I hope we can cope with this problem together.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefan Meyer. Bit of a heckler there in the wings, but luckily not too much of an intrusion. Well, that's from me and Stefan Meyer in Berlin, all for now, but I'll be back later in the programme with another guest. Back to you, John.
Well, now, David Cameron has insisted that the answer isn't letting more refugees into the country, but solving the root cause of the refugee crisis, a stance that's outraged his critics, who say he risks turning Britain into a pariah state. It's all playing into the debate on Britain's membership of Europe too, as you've just heard from Germany. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, now reports.
Refugees, mostly Syrian, board a train from the Macedonia-Greek border this morning. As the crisis escalates across Europe, David Cameron's critics say his silence has been deafening.
We'll give you the power.
Today, the Prime Minister, on a visit to a free school in Northamptonshire, signalled that he would not sign up to any Europe-wide distribution of refugees, and that it was the wrong approach.
We have taken a number of genuine asylum seekers from Syrian refugee camps, and we keep that under review. But we think the most important thing is to try to bring peace and stability to that part of the world. I don't think there is an answer that can be achieved simply by taking more and more refugees.
The Prime Minister's worried that a massive resettlement programme risks acting as a magnet to refugees and economic migrants. There's also concern in government that signing up to an EU-wide scheme distributing refugees could be creating more powers for Brussels, more Europe, just at a time when the Prime Minister's promising in his renegotiation to give you less Europe. Downing Street also wants to reassure voters that it's doing everything to secure British borders. Yesterday, people tried to enter Britain from Calais on a Eurostar train roof. One train was stalled for 16 hours. Government opponents say the government's confusing the immigration issue with an urgent humanitarian crisis.
For some time we felt that the government have really not been playing their part in what is a humanitarian crisis. I mean, these are refugees fleeing from terrible deprivation and suffering, and we should play our part in that.
The solution to dealing with this is not recreating Syria and Europe and taking in hundreds of thousands of refugees and migrants. That is not the solution. The solution is to tackle the cause of all of this, which is the fighting and carnage that's going on in Syria.
EU country diplomats say Britain's not burden sharing, and this may hurt David Cameron's renegotiation efforts. His critics think the Prime Minister has the referendum and domestic politics too much on his mind. Today, the government announced another change to its referendum bill. It's promised to hold back on major announcements that could influence a referendum in the final weeks of the campaign. It says it's a self-imposed gagging order and hopes that'll stop a backbench rebellion on Monday.
We think that they may well start using all kinds of mechanisms to push the argument towards a yes campaign if that's what the government is determined to do. So we're not satisfied.
David Cameron's team is now aiming for a referendum by September next year. The refugee crisis makes for a challenging backdrop, as well as any number of personal tragedies.
Gary Gibbon. Well, earlier when I spoke to Guy Verhofstadt, the former Belgian Prime Minister, I started by asking him what he made of David Cameron's assertion that the important thing was tackling the root cause of the crisis.
Well, I can agree with him because the main problem are the conflicts we have in our southern neighborhood, in Syria, the problems in Africa. But that said, you cannot look away from the enormous refugee crisis. And the refugee crisis is also the consequence of the absence of a European migration policy and a European asylum policy.
Well, as somebody who's been at the heart of Europe for many years, what is the sort of reaction that you're looking for? Are you looking for countries to pledge specific that they're prepared to take?
That's not the first thing to do. The first thing to do is to have a common asylum system that doesn't exist. The Dublin system, the actual system, is not a common asylum system. It's simply saying to the people that when you enter in a country, that country is responsible for you. What we need is to have safe havens, special facilities in the zone of conflict. And there we have to help these people and also to give the possibility to people to ask for asylum in these facilities, so that it is not necessary to jump into the arms of criminal organizations to reach the European soil.
You articulate what is effectively a federal European solution, and that, of course, is what terrifies the right wing in this country, the anti-Europeans, and that is exactly the kind of thing which would take Britain out of the EU. Are you not worried that there are other countries, not just Britain, that are really anxious about the dive into a federal Europe?
In the modern world, there is only one choice that you can make, is to go into the direction of more European integration, of a European federation, if we want to play a geopolitical and important economic role in the world order of tomorrow.
Well, I think I hear in that answer the former Prime Minister of Belgium saying to Britain, listen, mate, you better leave.
Now, I think there is another solution for Britain. The solution is maybe to have two types of membership. You have a full type membership, and then you're a member of the Euro, you're a member of Schengen, you're a member of all the necessary tools and instruments that are needed on the European level, or you have an associated membership. Many of our problems with the Euro, with the refugee crisis, are caused because of a lack of European Union, a lack of European unity and integration. And if we want to solve them, we need to do steps forward in our integration of the European Union. And if some countries, like for example Britain or Denmark, cannot accept them, then we have to offer them another type of membership. And that other type of membership could be a membership, an associated membership of the internal market, but that means also that these countries shall not be involved in all the decision making anymore inside the European Union.
Guy Verhofstadt, thank you very much indeed for talking with us. Tonight's main news. Europe struggles to cope with its worst crisis since the Second World War, thousands arriving at its borders day after day. From the railway station in Budapest, the awful image of the tiny Syrian child, body washed up on a Turkish beach. Amid appeals for every European country to do its share, David Cameron insists Britain won't be taking any more. Let's go back to Matt in Berlin. Matt.
Well, John, since we last spoke, we've had some more details about that appalling image of the Kurdish boy who was discovered dead on the beach in Turkey. And I have to warn you that this is a very distressing image, but we now know his name. His name was Aylan Kurdi, and he was 3 years old. And he was on a boat with 25 people from Bodrum in Turkey, which is not very far away from the Greek coastline. So it's a relatively short journey, but obviously they didn't make it, and his 5-year-old brother also didn't make it. So another appalling tragedy in this multitude of tragedies. Well, let's look at the picture from the Syrian point of view, and let's talk to Bashar al-Rifai. He's a vet, he's a Syrian refugee. Welcome to the program, Bashar.
Thank you, thank you.
Bashar, you left Homs, which is pretty much destroyed, about a month ago. Tell us about your journey.
Actually, it was a very difficult journey, starting from Turkey. You have to take a boat to Greece, and this is the most important part of the journey, that it's very, very dangerous, because as you know, a lot of people are drowning and dying there. So if you finish this part of the journey, you are almost safe. Then after this, we stayed in Greece like in 1 week to finish our papers. It's pretty good there.
And,
yes.
And you saw the image of that boy, didn't you? The dead boy on the beach in Turkey.
Yes.
What did that make you feel?
I don't know what to say. I feel bad, but I can do nothing. I don't know what to say.
And throughout this journey, I mean, what were the different levels of welcome, or the opposite, that you received in different European countries?
I guess the best country which give us the best welcoming is Germany, for sure. In Greece, it was like almost good, more than Macedonia and Serbia, but in Hungary, I'm sorry, it was very bad.
Are you treated with dignity in this country here, like a human being?
Here in Germany,
yeah.
Yes, for sure, yeah. We are feeling like we are very welcoming here, and all the people are kind, and they are dealing with us with very humanity way, yes.
Can you imagine living here for the rest of your life, or do you want to go back to Syria at some stage?
This is a difficult question. Right now, I want to stay here just to improve myself in my studying in university.
You're a vet, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I want to continue studying, masters and like this. And if I don't know, it's a very difficult question. If I want to go back there, in this time, I don't want to go back there for sure.
We're going to have to leave it there. Bashar Rifai, thank you very much for coming on the program. Good luck to you.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you heard it. This is just one story of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of stories experienced by refugees from Syria, and indeed, of course, other countries in that crescent of unrest from Syria all the way to Libya. Germany is doing its bit. I've personally been surprised by the outpouring of humanitarian goodwill that I've seen in this country, even if the authorities don't always get it right. As for the rest of Europe, perhaps not so much. And that's, of course, what's going to be discussed in the next few weeks. That's all from Berlin and London. Goodbye.